Logan Parker is on his knees in the smoke when he realizes the ceiling is about to come down. The overhead lights at the Riverside Market are popping one by one, showering sparks onto the burning aisle. He can't see more than a few feet ahead. The fire alarm is screaming the sprinklers are useless, and the whole grocery store smells like melted plastic and fear. "Help, my baby's still inside," a woman screams somewhere behind him, voice ragged, breaking. He tightens his grip on the tiny sneaker in his hand. Aisle 6 is a twisted mess of metal shelves and fallen cereal boxes, but that shoe is attached to a small leg pinned beneath a display rack. Logan shoves his shoulder under the edge of the metal muscle's screaming lungs burning. "Come on, kid," he mutters, half to himself, half to the little girl whose face is streaked with soot and tears. Somewhere outside, he can hear sirens closing in, and above that one voice, sharp, commanding, and terrified, shouting his name. "Logan, get out of there, that roof's going." He knows that voice. Claire Donovan, the woman who owns this place, who signs every paycheck. The woman the whole town says is too rich, too cold, and way too far above a night stalker like him. He ignores the warning plants, his boots, and heaves. The metal groans, the ceiling cracks, and the last thought in his mind, before everything gives way, is simple and stubborn. "No way I'm walking out of here without this kid. Before I go any further, tell me where you're listening from tonight and hit that like and subscribe button if you believe courage still matters in this world." Now let me take you back to where this really started. Logan Parker was 37 years old and already felt older than his own father. By night, he stocked shelves at the Riverside Market on the edge of Kansas City, lugging cases of canned soup, straightening cereal boxes, mopping up spilled milk at 2 a.m. By day, he was just dad to his 10-year-old son Mason, a skinny redhead with 2 big sneakers and a baseball glove that had seen better days. The two of them lived in a cramped second-floor apartment over a closed-down barber shop. The stairs creaked. The heater rattled every winter, and the rent notice slid under the door always a week sooner than he was ready for. 3 years earlier, Logan had been a firefighter. He'd worn the gear ridden the truck chased flames for a living. Until a warehouse collapse pinned his leg, and the doctors told him that if he wanted to walk without a cane, his days of running into burning buildings were over. His wife, Melissa, hadn't lived long enough to see him leave the department. Breast cancer took her in a blur of hospital rooms and bad news. On her last night, she'd grabbed his hand with what little strength she had left and whispered, "Don't let him grow up thinking you gave up on life, Logan. Promise me." He'd promised. So now he stocked shelves and fixed leaky faucets for neighbors on the side. He skipped lunch so Mason could have seconds. He wore the same 3 work shirts until the logos faded. But he never missed a parent-teacher meeting, never missed a ball game, even if he showed up smelling like bleach and floor cleaner. To most people, Logan was just the quiet stock guy who helped carry heavy bags for older folks to their cars. To Mason, he was everything. To himself, he was a man hanging on by his fingernails, trying not to break that promise to a woman buried on a hill outside town. On a chilly Thursday in October, as orange leaves blew across the parking lot, and the store manager complained about overtime, Logan clocked in for another overnight shift. He didn't know that somewhere on a private jet headed toward Kansas City, Claire Donovan, the high-powered chief executive of the entire Riverside Market chain, was circling one store on her tablet. Store number 118. His store. She'd decided to show up unannounced for a surprise midnight visit. And that decision was the spark that would pull their 2 very different lives into the same burning aisle. Logan didn't sleep the morning after the fire. Not with the smell of smoke still clinging to his skin. Not with the weight of what he'd done, or almost failed to do, pressing on his chest. And the little girl had survived. Her mother had wrapped both arms around Logan in the parking lot as the firefighters rolled in, crying into his shoulder as if he were family. But by dawn, that moment felt like a lifetime ago. He dragged himself into the apartment boots, leaving faint ash prints on the old linoleum. Mason was waiting at the kitchen table, swinging his legs like he always did, a bowl of cereal in front of him. "You okay, Dad?" Mason asked gently. Logan forced a smile. "Long night, buddy." He didn't mention the ceiling collapsing a half second after he yanked that little girl free. He didn't mention the way his old injury screamed when he lifted her. He didn't mention Claire Donovan, the CEO, who had shown up outside the burning store with a look in her eyes he couldn't quite figure out. He just poured himself coffee and hoped the tremor in his hand didn't show. That afternoon, the town already knew his name. Small-town gossip moved faster than any fire ever could. Some people nodded at him with admiration. Some muttered about publicity stunts because small towns had long memories and longer grudges. Most didn't know what to believe. But the next night at work, he sure found out who didn't believe in him. The assistant manager, Wes Hallowell, strode toward him with a stack of paperwork, a sour look etched into his face. Wes had been waiting years for someone to praise him for something, anything, and he hated that the hero of the week was a stock guy who barely talked. "Corporate's buzzing about you," Wes grumbled, dropping the stack onto Logan's cart. "And it's already a mess. You know that, right?" Logan blinked. "A mess? You think they're happy about a store burning down? Think they're celebrating that the CEO had to get personally involved last night?" Wes leaned in. "They're investigating. Fire inspectors, safety compliance. They're going through every corner of this place. And you were the one working the aisle where the fire started." Logan felt the words hit low and hard. He swallowed. "You're saying it's my fault, I'm saying," Wes replied with a thin smile. "Corporate's looking for answers, and you're the only one who was on shift. So yeah, good luck with that." He walked away before Logan could respond. For a moment, Logan stood frozen beside the pallet of canned vegetables. He stared at his hands, scraped, bandaged, trembling slightly. He had run into a burning store to save someone's child, and now he might get blamed for the fire itself. A few employees walked by whispering. He didn't miss the glances. Pity. Suspicion. A couple looked afraid to get too close, as if heroism were contagious and dangerous at the same time. He went back to stocking shelves quietly, methodically. He kept his head down. He always did. But at midnight, trouble found him again. Corporate auditors arrived in dark navy jackets, clipboards in hand, looking at every shelf, every extinguisher, every exposed wire. Logan offered to help explain the storage layout. None of them looked him in the eye. "You were the employee on duty," one of them said in a flat voice. "Yes." They scribbled notes. Not good ones. Another auditor pointed at the cracked backroom emergency light. "How long has this been like this?" Logan took a breath. "I put in a repair request 3 times. Never approved." Wes materialized beside them, fake sweet. "Don't blame the system, Logan. If you'd checked it more often, maybe we wouldn't be in this situation." Logan's hands curled into fists, but he kept them low at his sides. He didn't argue. He'd learned over the years that arguing didn't help men like him. Not with people who decided things from boardrooms and spreadsheets. An hour later, as he pushed a heavy box of detergent onto a shelf, 2 customers walked past, talking just loud enough. Heard the fire started in his aisle. Probably left something plugged in, or knocked something over. Clumsy guys cost companies millions. They passed him without realizing he heard every word. He kept stacking detergent until the box blurred. He blinked hard. He breathed slow. He didn't let his body shake. But inside, something old and familiar cracked the fear that he'd never be more than the man people blamed, the man people overlooked, the man people dismissed, no matter how much he tried to keep his promises. By dawn, he felt hollow. And that was when the next blow landed. As soon as he walked in the apartment door, Mason was sitting on the couch, eyes-red baseball glove in his lap. He wasn't swinging his legs. He wasn't humming like he usually did. He was just still. "You okay, bud?" Logan asked softly. Mason hesitated. "Some kids at practice. They said things. About what you," Mason whispered. "They said you almost burned the store down, that you made the fire worse trying to be a hero, that you're gonna get fired." Logan sat down heavily beside him. A bone-deep tiredness seeped into his spine. "I didn't start the fire," he said quietly. "I know," Mason replied. But his voice wavered. "It's just, they said we might have to move again if you lose your job. And I don't want to leave." The words hit harder than Wes's jabs, harder than the customer's whispers, harder than the auditor's cold eyes. Because Logan had promised Melissa on her last night that he'd keep their boy steady grounded safe. He couldn't face Mason's eyes when he felt like he was failing that promise inch by inch. He pulled his son close. "You're not going anywhere. Not if I can help it." Mason nodded, but his small hand stayed clenched on the baseball glove. That was how Logan knew the boy wasn't convinced. The next day, Logan arrived early at the store, hoping to avoid more questions. Instead, he walked straight into a buzz of gossip. "Did you hear she's coming today?" "Who, Claire Donovan?" His heart sank. He wasn't ready to see her again. Not after the fire. Not after the rumors. Not after feeling like a walking headline instead of a person. But within an hour, a sleek black SUV rolled into the loading bay. Employees scattered into pretending to work mode. Managers straightened their ties. And Logan felt himself disappear even further into the background. Claire Donovan stepped out in a tailored charcoal coat, hair swept back, eyes sharp enough to cut steel. She didn't look at anyone at first, not until the store director ushered her through the back entrance, talking a mile a minute about compliance issues and employee errors. Logan kept his head down. He didn't want her seeing him while he was covered in dust, sweat, and humiliation. But of course, fate wasn't kind enough to let him hide. He was restocking juices in the refrigerated aisle when he heard heels clicking sharply on polished tile. He didn't look up until her shadow stretched across the glass door in front of him. "Logan." He froze. He turned slowly. "She's not here to thank me this time," he thought. "She's here to finish burying me." Claire studied him in silence for a moment. Her expression was unreadable. Then she said, "We need to talk, now." Wes popped out of nowhere like a vulture smelling a fresh carcass. "Ms. Donovan, if you'd like to discuss the investigation, I can." She didn't even look at him. "I'm not talking to you." The temperature in the aisle seemed to drop 10 degrees. Wes's lips twitched. "He's just a night stalker." I don't think Claire finally turned her gaze on him, and if looks carried voltage, Wes would have dropped right there. "I'm aware of his job title," she said coolly. "What I'm not aware of is why you're speaking over me." The aisle went dead silent. A couple of employees peeked over frozen beanbags like prairie dogs watching a tornado. "Logan," she repeated softly, "walk with me." He followed her toward the back corridor, every step feeling heavier than the one before. The rumors, the blame, the inspectors, the pressure on Mason, the fear he'd lose the one steady paycheck he had. It all pressed down on him as if wrapped in wet concrete. When the door closed behind them, she waited until the noise faded before speaking. "I've heard a lot of things in the last 24 hours, she said quietly. "None of them came from you." He took a slow breath. "Didn't think anyone wanted to hear my side." A flicker of something crossed her expression. Annoyance, maybe frustration, maybe something softer. "I want to hear it," she said. He shook his head. "Doesn't matter. People have already made up their minds." She stepped closer. Too close. Close enough he could smell faint citrus from her coat, so clean it made him self-conscious of the smoke still trapped in his pores. "Logan," she said, voice low, steady. "I saw you go into that building. I saw you haul that child into your arms and run out while the ceiling was nearly collapsing. Don't you dare let anyone rewrite that." Something in him buckled. His throat tightened. He swallowed hard. But before he could answer, a voice barked from the doorway. "Ms. Donovan." It was the district compliance officer corporate's version of a storm cloud. "We've concluded our preliminary findings," he said. "You'll want to see this." Claire straightened. "And it can't wait, no ma'am." He handed her a thin folder. She opened it. Her eyes scanned the first page, then the second. Her jaw tightened. Logan tried to read her face. She didn't let him. But when she closed the folder, she looked at him with something like dread shadowing her features. "Logan," she said quietly, "we have a problem." And in that moment, with those 5 simple words, Logan knew. Whatever pressure he'd felt so far was nothing compared to what was coming next. Claire didn't speak at first. She just held the thin compliance folder in both hands, as if steadying herself, eyes fixed somewhere past Logan's shoulder. When she finally looked up, her expression was tight controlled, but beneath that control was something that made Logan's stomach drop. "This report says the fire didn't start in the back aisle," she said quietly. "It says someone tampered with the electrical panel near the emergency freezer. Someone pulled wires, loosened connections, enough to spark under load." Logan blinked. "But that's nowhere near where I was working." "I know." Claire exhaled. "The problem is, the auditors think it was sabotage, and they think you might have had the access and the motive." "Motive?" Logan's voice broke like brittle wood. "What motive?" The compliance officer stepped forward. "It's routine, Mr. Parker. Anytime there's a fire in a store, we look first at the employee on duty. Your file shows you were previously injured in a line-of-duty incident. PTSD. Maybe possible stress. Sometimes people stop." Claire's voice cut through the corridor like a blade. "You're done talking." The officer stiffened. Claire turned to Logan. "I don't believe this. Not for a second. But the board, they want answers tonight. And they want you there. Now." He felt his pulse slam through his ribs. "They want me? Why? Because they think you're the loose thread." Her jaw tightened. "The one who can't defend himself." He didn't flinch, but the words hit hard. "Claire," he said low. "I didn't start that fire." "I know." She stepped closer. "But they won't take my word for it." Everything inside him twisted. Because he knew what it meant when powerful people needed someone to blame. And he knew exactly who they'd pick. The board meeting was held at the regional headquarters, a glass and steel building that made Logan feel small the moment he stepped inside. Claire walked beside him, chin high, stride sharp, like she was daring anyone to blink. But as soon as the doors opened to the conference room, a wall of faces turned toward them, faces of people who had already decided what they wanted this meeting to be. The regional director, a man named Hartwell, whose suit looked like it cost more than Logan's truck, pointed at an empty chair. "Mr. Parker, sit." Claire sat beside him as if she were the only barrier between him and a firing squad. The compliance officer slid the report across the table. Evidence shows tampering occurred between midnight and 1 a.m. You were clocked in. You had access to the back corridors during that time frame. "I was stalking aisle 9, Logan said. "I never went near that panel." A board member leaned forward. "We don't have footage of your location. The cameras were down." "Convenient." Logan stared. "Convenient for who?" "For you," the board member replied coldly. Claire's fist tightened. "Enough. You have no proof of wrongdoing." Hartwell tapped the table. He ran into a burning building. That isn't the action of a panicked bystander. That's someone going back to fix a mistake. Logan felt heat crawl up his neck. Not embarrassment, not shame, but raw indignation. "I ran in," he said quietly, "because a child was screaming." But they didn't hear him. They didn't want to. One board member leaned back in her chair, voice dripping ice. "We believe Mr. Parker may have caused the electrical fault, then attempted to cover his tracks by playing hero." Claire shot up from her seat. "That's enough. It isn't." Hartwell interrupted. "We're suspending him pending investigation, effective immediately. Suspending the only paycheck that kept Mason fed. Suspending his chance at keeping their tiny apartment. Suspending the man who ran into fire to save a stranger's child." He felt the room tilt slightly, as if grief itself had weight. Claire turned to him, eyes desperate for a solution she couldn't yet give. But before she could speak, a radio cracked over the intercom. "All units, this is dispatch. Report of structural collapse at West Side Towers. Repeat, structural collapse. Multiple civilians trapped on upper floors. Fire units en route." The room fell silent. Hartwell frowned. "West Side Towers, that's still under renovation." Claire stiffened. "Logan, isn't Mason's after-school robotics club meeting there today?" His blood froze. "Yes," he whispered. "Second floor." Every person in that room stared at him. He didn't hesitate. He bolted for the door. Logan Claire called, rushing after him, but he was already sprinting down the hallway through the lobby out into the winter air. He didn't stop at the sidewalk. He didn't feel the cold. He didn't feel the pain in his leg where old injuries still lived. He vaulted into his truck, turned the ignition, and tore out of the parking lot with tires screaming. Smoke curled into the sky long before he reached the building. By the time he swung into the West Side Towers parking lot, chaos was everywhere. A construction crane leaned dangerously, its support cables snapped. The building's second-floor balcony had partially collapsed, blocking part of the stairwell. Small flames licked along the outer scaffolding. Parents screamed, firefighters shouted, debris rained down. But above all, the noise came a sound he recognized in his bones. Dad. Dad Mason's voice. High, thin, terrified. Logan's world narrowed to a pinpoint. He jumped out of the truck before it stopped moving. A firefighter spotted him. "Sir, stay back. That's my son up there," Logan barked. The man hesitated, but saw something in Logan's eyes that made him shift aside. "You were a firefighter," the man said quietly, noting the old department tattoo on Logan's wrist. "Yes." Logan grabbed a helmet from a supply bin. "Let me go. We haven't assessed the load-bearing risks. I don't have time for a safety briefing." He strapped the helmet under his chin and ran straight toward the collapsing stairwell. Several parents gasped. A camera crew that had arrived for the emergency swung their lenses toward him. Claire's car screeched into the lot seconds later. She leapt out, shouting, "Logan! Logan!" But he was already climbing. His leg throbbed with each step. Old pain, old trauma, old fear. He pushed past all of it. "You don't get to quit on that boy," Melissa's voice echoed in his head. "You don't get to run away from the fire." He reached the second-floor landing where a massive slab of concrete pinned the stairwell entrance. He wedged his shoulder under it, gritting his teeth as heat pulsed against his skin. "Mason," he shouted. "Dad, I'm here." A small hand appeared through a gap where the ceiling had collapsed. Logan's heart almost gave out at the sight. He forced himself upward, pressing all his weight into the slab. Muscles screamed. Old scars flared. His breath hitched. "Come on, bud," he rasped. "Crawl through. Hurry!" Mason squeezed through the narrow opening, dust covering his hair. Tears streaked down his face. The moment he was free, Logan collapsed backward with him in his arms as the slab crashed down where he'd been standing. Gasps erupted below. Several firefighters shouted. Claire's hand covered her mouth, eyes wide and wet. But it wasn't over. "Wait!" a teacher screamed from inside the building. Two more kids still trapped in the corner room. "The fire is spreading." Logan turned. Flames were crawling along the beams. The air was turning black. He set Mason down with trembling hands. "Stay here. Don't move." Mason clutched his sleeve. "Dad, no." Logan gripped his son's shoulders. "Look at me," he said softly. "You're safe. I promised your mom I'd always protect you. That means I go back in for the others." Mason's face crumpled. "But what about you?" Logan swallowed hard. He didn't answer. He turned and ran straight into the smoke. The third-floor hallway was hell. Heat tore at his skin. Visibility was low, but he followed two small voices crying behind a locked classroom door. He slammed his shoulder into it twice before it splintered. Two children huddled under a desk, coughing. "Come on," he said, scooping one up and motioning for the other to grab his shirt. A beam fell behind them. Ash filled the air. The building groaned. Everything inside screamed to run faster. He barreled down the hall, shielding the children with his own body, when sparks rained from the ceiling. Halfway to the stairwell, the floor sagged. Claire's voice echoed faintly from outside. "Logan." He didn't stop. He couldn't. The teacher's room door exploded behind them as flames surged. He jumped the last 3 steps of the landing, twisted his ankle, but didn't drop either child. And then hands reached for them. Firefighters grabbed the children. Strong arms pulled Logan off the collapsing stairwell just as the landing gave way behind him. The building shuddered and groaned, then settled into a heap of charred ruin. A cheer erupted from the crowd. Mason's scream cut through everything. "Dad." He ran through the line of firefighters and threw his arms around Logan's neck, sobbing so hard his whole body shook. Claire reached them seconds later, her face streaked with ash and tears, eyes wide with shock, and something deeper, something raw. "You went back in," she whispered. Logan nodded once, voice gone. He held Mason tight, letting the boy's heartbeat steady his own. One of the firefighters stepped forward, staring at Logan with open awe. "You're the reason 3 kids are alive tonight," he said. "You're a damn hero." Behind him, cameras flashed. Reporters shouted. Board members who had been ready to destroy him stood pale and speechless. And Claire Donovan. She looked at him like she was seeing the truth for the first time. Not the accused. Not the suspect. Not the stock guy with a cheap uniform and tired eyes, But the man who had run into fire twice without being asked, without hesitation, without fear of dying because someone needed saving. Logan didn't feel like a hero. But as Claire stepped toward him, her voice soft and trembling, he realized everything had just changed. "Logan," she whispered, "the whole world saw what you did." He tightened his arms around his son. And now she added, eyes shining, "Nothing, and no one is ever going to doubt who you really are again." And for the first time in a long, long while, Logan felt the weight on his shoulders begin to lift. The world around Logan blurred into a haze of flashing lights, frantic voices, and drifting smoke. He sat on the curb with Mason clinging to his side, the boy's arms locked around his ribs like he feared his father might vanish if he let go. Fire crews worked behind them, extinguishing the last pockets of flame that smoldered along the collapsed stairwell. Parents cried. Some prayed. Others stared at Logan like they were trying to understand what kind of man ran into a shaking building twice. Claire knelt in front of him. Her coat was streaked with ash, her hair loose from the wind, her face pale, but her eyes were fixed on him with a kind of stunned reverence. "You saved 3 children," she whispered. "You saved your son. You..." Her voice broke. She reached out, hesitated, then rested her hand on his shoulder. But Logan hardly heard her. His pulse still hammered from the adrenaline that hadn't yet drained. Every muscle in his body ached. His left ankle was swelling. And behind it all was a ringing silence, the kind that came after roaring chaos. A firefighter walked over, helmet tucked under his arm. He looked at Logan not as a civilian, but as an equal. "You're the one who pulled those kids?" he said. Logan nodded once, barely. The firefighter let out a slow breath. "You ever do this before? Because the way you moved in there, most rookies freeze on their first entry." Logan didn't answer. Claire's eyes flicked to him. Confusion crossed her face. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, a cluster of corporate leaders arrived behind her, including Hartwell and the compliance officer. They approached cautiously, as if stepping into a sacred place where they didn't belong. Mr. Parker Hartwell said stiffly, "We heard what happened." Claire rose to her feet so fast the men flinched. "You didn't hear," she snapped. "You watched it. Every news channel in the state is broadcasting it live." They shifted uneasily. The compliance officer cleared his throat. "We didn't realize your skill set." Logan finally looked up at him. His eyes were tired, but sharp. "Skill set." The officer swallowed. "Your ability to move under structural duress, your knowledge of collapse patterns, fire behavior, entry angles, the way you shielded those children. That wasn't luck or panic. That was..." He trailed off, unable to finish. Claire waited. The silence pressed. Logan exhaled slowly. There was no hiding now. Not after what they'd seen. Not after the way he'd moved when the world was falling apart around him. "My name's not just Mr. Parker," he said finally. "My full name is Logan Christopher Parker, former lieutenant with Station 19. The firefighters nearby froze. Hartwell's mouth fell slightly open. Even Claire's breath caught. "I was a firefighter for almost 15 years, Logan continued quietly. "Made plenty of entry rescues. Learned how buildings breathe when they're about to come down. Learned how to listen to steel. Learned what seconds mean when you're carrying someone who can't walk." He paused, swallowing hard. "And then a warehouse collapse took me out. Crushed my leg. Doctor said I'd never climb another ladder. Never haul gear again. Never trust my own strength under heat." A bitter, fragile smile touched his mouth. "So I stocked shelves instead. Worked nights. Tried not to be who I used to be." Mason leaned into him, listening with wide, wet eyes. "Dad," Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want you to worry, Logan whispered, pressing a kiss to the boy's head. And because I didn't want to remember who I couldn't be anymore. Claire stepped closer. Logan, you ran into that building like someone who never stopped being a firefighter. He looked away. That's the thing about promises, he said softly. They come back when you least expect them to. What promise? Claire asked. He stared at the ruined stairwell, the smoke curling upward like ghosts. My wife. Before she passed, his voice trembled. She made me promise not to disappear into grief, not to stop living in front of Mason, not to let fear turn me into a ghost. His hand tightened around his son's shoulder, and when I heard him yelling from inside that building, that promise pulled me through every damn flame. The firefighters stood silently, heads lowered in respect. Claire's eyes glistened. She took another step closer, something breaking open inside her expression, something soft, something deep. Logan, she said gently, this changes everything. Hartwell cleared his throat. Yes. Yes, it does. He straightened his suit nervously. Mr. Parker, the board wishes to rescind your suspension immediately. Logan didn't move. Hartwell rushed to continue. And we want to offer our sincerest apology. The assumptions we made, the accusations you tried to turn him into a scapegoat. Claire cut in ice, slicing through her tone. You tried to fire the man who saved 3 children, Ms. Donovan Numb. She stepped directly between Logan and the suits. You're going to listen. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of ash. Parents nearby watched. Reporters recorded. Everything she said now would be heard by half the city. You judged him because he stocks shelves, Claire said. You dismissed him because he keeps his head down and works quietly. You mocked him for an injury you never asked about. And you doubted him because he's not the kind of man you see in boardrooms. Hartwell flushed red. But this, she pointed to the smoking, broken building. This is what real leadership looks like. This is what real character looks like. And none of you recognized it. Logan shifted uncomfortably. He hated being the center of attention. But he didn't pull away when Claire turned to him. You didn't just save children tonight, she said softly. You exposed every blind spot this company has. And if any of them had half the courage you did, they'd have run up those stairs with you. Several board members bowed their heads. Ashamed, humbled, silent. The compliance officer cleared his throat. Mr. Parker, if you'd be willing, the company at the highest level would like to consult with you on emergency training, safety protocols, crisis response plans. You have knowledge we didn't realize we needed. Logan stared at him. You're offering me a job? No, the officer said, shaking his head. We're offering you a position that could keep people safe, a position that could change this entire company, lead it into something better, something responsible, Claire added gently. Something only you can do. The firefighters nodded in agreement. Parents clutched their kids tighter. Reporters murmured into microphones. And Mason looked up at his dad with a hope so pure it made Logan's throat clench. You should do it, Mason whispered. Dad, you're meant to help people. You always were. Claire crouched so she could meet Mason's eyes. He's right, she said softly. Your dad is a hero. Not because he ran into that building, but because he never stopped caring about people even when no one cared about him. She turned to Logan. Let us give you a chance to do this your way. Logan stared at the ruined building again. The last smoke curled upward. The last embers glowed orange. The sun sank lower behind the crane. And his old life, the one he'd been patching together with long nights and quiet exhaustion, suddenly felt too small to contain the man he had been forced to become again. He took a slow breath. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" Claire's expression softened into something that wasn't just business, something personal, human, hopeful. "Help me rebuild this company," she said. "Help us protect every worker, every customer, every person who walks into our stores. Help me make sure no one else gets ignored the way you were. Help me create something better." Her voice steadied warm with conviction. "Partner with me, Logan." He looked down at Mason, who nodded fiercely, then back at the firefighters who raised their chins in solidarity, then at the board members who avoided his gaze ashamed, then at Claire, who, unlike the rest, held his eyes without flinching. A decision rose in him like dawn. But before he could speak, a paramedic leaned over them. "Sir, you need to get that ankle looked at. It's swelling badly." Claire stepped closer, anxiety flashing across her face. "Logan, you're hurt." He finally exhaled a small, tired laugh rumbling from him. "Yeah," he said softly. "I guess I am." Claire touched his arm. "Mason and I are riding with you." And as they helped him to his feet, the crowd parted instinctively, not for a stock clerk, but for a man they'd just watched do the impossible. The world had shifted. The night had changed everything. And when Logan looked at Claire, he sensed this wasn't just the end of a crisis. It was the beginning of something he didn't yet have words for, something that would demand courage of a different kind. The morning after the collapse, the hospital room was dim and quiet, lit only by a soft amber lamp in the corner. Logan lay propped up in the bed, his ankle wrapped, his ribs bruised, but alive. Mason slept curled up in the recliner beside him, still gripping his dad's work glove like it was a lifeline. Across the room, Claire spoke quietly with the attending physician. When she finally approached Logan's bed, she didn't have the guarded, polished expression of a CEO. She looked like someone carrying deep gratitude mixed with the kind of relief that steals a person's breath. "Everyone at headquarters saw the footage," she said softly. "They saw you running into that building. They saw you carry those kids out. They saw who you really are." Logan didn't answer right away. He watched his son's chest rise and fall, steady now, safe. Claire pulled a chair to his bedside. "And Hartwell resigned this morning," she added. "He said it was time to let someone with real leadership step forward." She almost smirked. "He meant you." He shook his head. "I stocked shelves last week. And yesterday she replied, you saved a building full of children, corrected our entire emergency response system, and forced this company to face its own blind spots. That's not shelf stocking. That's leadership, whether you meant to show it or not." He didn't know what to say. For most of his life, since the accident, he'd spoken as little as possible, believing silence made him invisible, and invisibility made life easier. Claire reached into her coat and placed a folder on his lap. "I want you to take this," she said. "And I want you to think carefully before you turn it down." He opened it slowly. Inside were documents outlining a new department safety training and crisis response, reporting directly to the company president. The name at the top startled him. Director Logan C. Parker. His throat tightened. "I'm not qualified," he whispered. "You're the most qualified man I've ever met," she said. "And I won't take no for an answer. Not when I watched you run toward danger to save people who weren't even yours. Not when I watched how your son looks at you like you hung the moon." He stared at the papers again, at the seat he was being offered, not out of pity, not out of pressure, but out of earned respect. "What about the board?" he asked. Claire shook her head gently. The board didn't argue this time. Some cried, actually. She leaned in, lowering her voice. One of them said she'd forgotten what real courage looked like until she watched you carry those children out. Logan closed the folder. For the first time in years, he let himself breathe without bracing for the next blow. The world didn't snap back to normal overnight. But slowly, over the next few weeks, things shifted. Parents from the robotics club visited to thank him, some with casseroles, some with shaky voices that broke halfway through their sentences. Kids drew crayon pictures of him with a superhero cape and taped them to his door. Firefighters sent a plaque calling him an honorary member again, something he held with quiet pride. Wes, the assistant manager, who'd once treated him like he was invisible, appeared one afternoon at Logan's apartment. He stood on the stoop, holding a box of donuts, looking like a man who'd bitten into a slice of humble pie and wasn't sure how to swallow. "I'm sorry," Wes muttered, "for everything." Logan studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded once, a simple gesture that said, "Enough." Even the compliance officer reached out requesting guidance on revising their emergency protocols. Logan met with him at the headquarters cafe, where the man apologized earnestly, nervously, for misjudging him. Logan shook his hand. No grudges. Not anymore. As for the job offer, he accepted it 2 weeks after leaving the hospital. He didn't announce it. He didn't celebrate. He simply showed up on his first day with his old Station 19 badge tucked inside his pocket, a quiet reminder of the man he had always been. His first order of business: implement mandatory structural safety checks. Train every employee from cashier to executive in evacuation protocol. Work with local fire departments to stage drills. And make sure no one ever again was treated like he once had been. A year later, Logan stood inside a renovated training center the company built under his direction. Bright lights, fire-resistant materials, interactive safety displays, a wall dedicated to real heroes who'd stepped up in moments of crisis. At the center, in a frame of brushed steel, was a photograph someone else had taken the night of the collapse, Logan carrying one child under his arm while shielding another behind him, smoke swirling around all three of them. He stared at it sometimes before turning the lights on, remembering how terrified he'd been, how determined, how alive. That morning he heard footsteps behind him. Claire entered wearing jeans, a soft sweater, her hair down. She smiled in that easy way she reserved only for quiet moments. "Morning, Director Parker," he smirked. "Still weird hearing that. You've earned it." She handed him a thermos of coffee, his favorite roast. "Big turnout today. The mayor's coming to fire chief several schools." He nodded. "I'm ready." "Good," she said, bumping his shoulder lightly. "Because we're dedicating this center to someone." "Oh, who?" She turned to face him fully. "You." Logan blinked. "What?" "There's a reason the plaque at the entrance says Parker Safety Institute." Her voice softened. "It's named after you. After your courage. After what you taught us." He didn't speak for several seconds. His chest tightened, not painfully, but in a way that felt like something broken inside him had finally settled into place. He exhaled steady and long. Mason appeared from behind the corner just then, holding a model fire truck for the ceremony's ribbon cutting. "You ready, Dad?" the boy asked. Logan reached out, ruffling his son's hair. "Yeah, buddy," he said, voice warm. "I think I am." Claire linked her arm through his, guiding him toward the entrance where the crowd waited. And for the first time in years, Logan Parker felt the world not as a burden on his shoulders, but as a place he could stand in fully without apology, without fear, without looking down. Some people earn their titles. Some earn their second chances. And some men, the quiet ones, the steady ones, earn something rarer. A life rebuilt not by glory, but by the simple, stubborn courage to keep showing up when the world expects you to fade. And sometimes that's where real hero stories begin.